Hello, one and all, to another episode of Deep Lore. Diseases are weird. The whole you can't see them with the naked eye and don't know they're around until you're suffering symptoms from them adds an extra layer on top of the already established fear. But there's some diseases that the origin is unknown, and when you start reading about it, it just seems to get weirder and weirder. This was my reaction when I first heard about the nodding disease, or the nod of death. It's unknown how long ago this disease was affecting people throughout history. However, the first recorded example that seems to resemble the symptoms of nodding disease was back in 1962, specifically in some very remote mountains in the United Republic of Tanzania. However, now it seems like it's rapidly spread to other African countries, namely South Sudan and Uganda. When researchers first carried out research into the disease in the mountainous people of Tanzania, there always seemed to be the same similar symptoms. Firstly, it only seemed to affect children from 5 to 15 years old. It's very rare that it affects anyone younger, and almost never affects anyone older, at least initially. The most obvious symptom is that, under certain conditions, the neck muscles of the patients would suddenly go soft, unable to retract, which causes the head to momentarily sink forward with their chin towards their chest. Hence the name of the nodding disease. This would usually happen a few times a day. More research makes this disease even more bizarre. The certain conditions that causes this to happen: if the patient begins to eat something, or if the patient feels cold. Sometimes they only need to see the food before their neck muscles start rapidly relaxing and tightening, resulting in a repeated nod. To make it even more cryptic, the head nod doesn't seem to happen when the patient is eating food that they are unfamiliar with, or food that wouldn't typically be in their area, like chocolate or other sweet treats. Another symptom is that the patient's growth will be entirely stunted, making it impossible for further development, such as height or muscle mass, to take place. This begins to develop into more traditional seizures that can cause external injury to the patient if they fall in certain situations. MRI scans have shown that irreversible damage to the hippocampus had taken place when the patient reached this stage. The chance of survival from this disease is relatively low. Usually when the symptoms start to develop, they have 3 years left. Some children have completely recovered from it, but that seems like a small number compared to the thousands or potentially tens of thousands that have died from it. From the 1960s onwards, it seems to have spread north through Uganda and into South Sudan, causing children in both countries to experience the disease, and even in 2021, after years of ground research, there is no cure for it. Some anti-epileptic medication can be administered, and some people have tried giving anti-malaria pills, but the former only helps control the nodding, but doesn't change the physical deterioration, and the latter hasn't seemed to show any benefits. There has been a large amount of ideas and theories to try and explain this disease, some more likely than others, but none fully encapsulate every victim. Some theories point to a parasite that is carried by flies. This is because the children's blood would often show signs of a parasitic invasion, but this would only mean that the communities that are in direct contact with this parasite would get it, as it can't spread like viruses can. In addition, places that have high rates of infection with this parasite can often have less cases of nodding disease. Furthermore, there is no evidence that this parasite can invade the nervous system. It must be noted that Uganda has had a few civil wars from the 1990s to the mid-2000s. Knowing this, one theory that seems to be shared around is that the patients could have developed this disease from exposure to toxic weapons from the war. They seem to note that when there was no war, there was no nodding disease. It gets a step deeper because one of the lead researchers into the disease in Uganda, called Dr. David Lagoro, believes that he's found evidence that 3 camps used during this war that the Ugandan people were invited into, for reasons of their own safety, of course, it's said that food rations from the government were distributed among the people. These 3 camps also seem to be the ones where the people began having symptoms of the nodding disease, leaving many Ugandan people wondering if their government perhaps attempted to cull them in some way, or to weaken potential uprisings. If this was man-made by the government, then this theory wouldn't make sense because the people in 1960s in Tanzania got it. But perhaps, while it is a real disease naturally spread by some unknown parasite, the Ugandan government still could have deliberately utilised it and infected food rations with it, with malicious intent. Unfortunately, due to cuts, most of the support and research into this disease was revoked. The disease is still increasing, but not much support is being offered. I suspect that if no more investigations are done, we'll never find out the cause, be it natural or malign. This disease is very strange. The symptoms and the circumstances that it seemed to develop in Uganda, and the fact that it doesn't affect the child when they eat something that they don't know about, such as chocolate, is really, really strange. I really hope more research does eventually go into this. Thank you for watching this episode of Deep Lore. Hopefully, it's left you wanting to view more content. Please leave a like if you enjoyed it, and subscribe if you haven't done so yet. I would appreciate it if you could share it with your friends. After all, why leave the comfort of the VCR when we're only at the tip of the iceberg? There are still plenty more video cassettes left to watch.